As Rapture began to show its true colours, many of its failures were put on Andrew Ryan as his ideology was flawed from the beginning. Riots started to take place as other individuals such as Frank Fontaine tried to seize control of the whole city. But as things got worse and worse, Rapture was to eventually fall, leading to the deaths of both Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine by the hands of Ryan's own offspring. With Rapture now essentially leaderless and falling to pieces thanks to the splices that roamed the streets, it would be seen to many that it was over. The story of Rapture was to be left at the bottom of the sea. However, some did remain, and 8 years after the events of Ryan's downfall, a new leader would emerge to run the city and control the splices that remain. This individual would be an extremely experienced doctor who worked closely with Ryan during the peak of Rapture, and with her ideologies developed from her upbringing would bring Rapture into a new era, developing new technologies to try and bring about a new golden age of this once utopian city. This doctor would be Dr. Sofia Lamb, past psychologist who worked in Rapture, who would go on to set up her own religion to make the people of Rapture follow her every plea, taking out anyone who got in her way. But what is Sofia Lamb's story? Why did she come to Rapture? What was her job during her time here, and how did she become Rapture's new leader? Well, in today's video we explore the full story of Sofia Lamb, as well as her established cult known as the Rapture Family. This is the story of Bioshock's Dr. Sofia Lamb. Before Rapture was even a thing, Sofia Lamb was raised by her father, a physician who strongly believed in the utilitarian ideal of the greater good, believing that humanity could be positive where happiness and pleasure could out the actions of people that wish to cause harm to others. He would label this ideology of his as the triage imperative. Being majorly inspired by her father, Sofia took his philosophy and, as well as that, followed his career path, studying psychiatry at the University of Oxford. But soon after this, or during it, war would break out all over the world, and during this time, Sofia would live within Hiroshima, Japan, as World War II reached its peak. But after the United States of America dropped their nuclear weapons on the city, Sofia would see this as an opportunity to go on to work as a missionary, providing medical relief for the survivors of the bombings. Incredibly, Sofia was able to survive the bombing of Hiroshima, maybe being out of the city at the time they happened, or being in a safe place when they fell. However, she was one of the only survivors within her friendship group, as many, if not all of her close friends she had made in her time within this city had been killed in this attack. Because of this horrific event, Sofia was outraged at the news that it was the United States that had dropped the bombs, and that they labelled the event as being for the greater good, using the same sentiment that her father taught her back when she grew up. With this discovery, Sofia convinced herself that the world was a dark and twisted place, and eventually it was doomed to destroy itself. Venturing to America, Sofia was deeply distressed by what had happened. She needed a new world, somewhere where she could truly embrace her ideology and wasn't surrounded by politicians who used the phrase for the greater good to commit atrocities and kill innocents. At this time, Andrew Ryan, a man who had also seen the true destruction that humanity was capable of and was appalled by it, reached out to Sofia Lamb, knowing that she was incredibly skilled in psychology. Ryan had a utopia in mind, a place away from the corrupt on the surface from the USSR, American government and religion. He was to set up Rapture, a place they could build up for themselves where all of their ideologies could be embraced and man could live free from control. Ryan immediately offered this invitation up to Lamb to have her provide counselling within this new world, and by the year of 1950, Sofia Lamb immediately agreed to joining Ryan and ventured down to the new utopian world of Rapture. As she got down into Rapture, Lamb was free to expand her ideologies, with her main goal of being to enlighten the citizens through the common good and to truly help Ryan create the ultimate utopia for people to live in. One of her biggest contributions was within Pauper's Drop, where she would provide free therapy sessions for the poor citizens. She would also put on poker games where she would deliberately lose to help spread wealth to those who needed it, as well as the creation of an artistic commune at her personal property in Diane, Dionysus Park. Her influence spread throughout all of Rapture as many of her patients began to respect her greatly. The year was now 1951 and Lamb became pregnant and eventually gave birth to her daughter, Eleanor Lamb. With a brand new child, Lamb pledged a new goal. Eleanor was to be her vessel, and her goal was to try and turn her into a complete genius that would be far beyond anyone else's abilities within Rapture. With this new goal in mind, Sofia separated Eleanor from all the other children, isolating her and privately tutoring her to make sure she got the best education she could get without any outsider influence. But as Lamb's influence within Rapture grew, this got Andrew Ryan's immediate attention, and because of it, became jealous of how people responded to her. And of course, with this thinking, Ryan began regretting his decision of bringing her down to his utopian city. She could become more important than him and his creation. With clashing ideologies, Ryan agreed to a series of public debates where he would claim she was corrupting influence in his paradise, with the ultimate aim of diffusing Lamb's support throughout the city and showing off the flaws in her reasoning. These debates covered a series of topics from religious rights to even the nature of reality. But Sofia was not a dumb individual, and studying at Oxford helped prepare her for these types of debates. Because of this, she was able to hold her own against Ryan, and ultimately Ryan's plan of tearing her down on a public stage did not work. In fact, Lamb became so popular after these public debates within the poorer areas she worked in that her loyal followers started to shape their own religion based around all of her ideals of the greater good and unity, and created the Rapture Family, and used Lamb's book Unity and Metamorphosis as their sacred text to base their society on. On top of this, she also tried desperately to recruit Charles Milton Porter to join the Rapture Family, sending him her book and a butterfly. Porter, however, denied her request, knowing she only wanted him for control of Rapture central computing. This led Porter to come up with the conclusion that if she kept out of Minerva's den, he would keep Rapture from grinding to a complete and sudden halt. Despite this failure to get Porter on board with her ultimate goal, Lamb was still increasing in popularity, and because of it, Ryan knew he had to do something to put her in her place and shut down any uprising she might bring about with her new cult of the family. Immediately, he took to assigning Augustus Sinclair's firm, Sinclair Solutions, of putting a spy within Lamb's inner circle to try and find any crime she was committing so that he could lock her up for good. The spy in question was a reporter for the Rapture Tribune, Stanley Paul, who convinced Simon Wales, one of Lamb's higher-ranking members, that the paper he worked for was suppressing his real journalistic rights about what was going on within Rapture. Sofia herself believed this and felt he truly wanted to join her family. During his time here, Eleanor became extremely suspicious of him and what he truly wanted from Sofia. But before anything could be exposed, Stanley reported back to Andrew Ryan that Lamb was indeed trying to take over all of Rapture, and with that false claim, Ryan was able to make his move and have her arrested and have her placed within Persephone penal colony with a lot of her followers. In a final move before she was sent to Persephone, Sofia entrusted her daughter Eleanor to the care of her loyal patient and Pauper's Drop resident Grace Holloway, who cared deeply for the young girl. But now with Sofia Lamb's arrest, Ryan was able to run Rapture the way he wanted once again, without the fear of another political party rising up, or so he thought anyway. With Sofia locked up within Persephone, most of the upper class within Rapture, who looked up to those who created the city, forgot about Dr. Sofia Lamb as they continued to live their luxury lifestyle. But for those within Pauper's Drop, they would remember Dr. Lamb as well as the actions of Andrew Ryan, and would hold on to that in the next coming years. But whilst Ryan thought all was fine now, little did he know that placing Dr. Lamb in prison would only build up her following and help her strike back against those who had put her in Persephone prison. As Sofia lay within Persephone, she was under the rule of Augustus Sinclair, who would go on to put her to work as a therapist for the other inmates to try and make them more docile. But this was a terrible idea, as this granted Lamb extra freedom, which she would go on to use to build up her support amongst all the other prisoners within the prison, as well as some of the prison staff, such as Warden Nigel Vare. But Sinclair had other ideas for what to do with the prisoners that had been treated by Lamb. Here, Sinclair would start selling volunteer inmates to Fontaine Futuristics as plasmid test subjects as well as Big Daddy candidates. But on top of that, Sinclair made Lamb choose from her own people who were to be used for Adam experiments. It was this, or she would lose her position within the prison and her extended freedoms. This situation really tested Lamb, as she would see this action as somewhat a betrayal of her own people. But as time progressed on, Lamb eventually had enough of what was going on within the prison, and with the influence gained started an uprising, taking full control of the prison from Sinclair, and finally gaining her full freedom once again. But with this new freedom, Lamb did not immediately go back to Rapture, most likely to stay out of Ryan's sight, and to help rebuild her following to eventually hit back against the whole of Rapture. However, on New Year's Eve 1958, Lamb ventured to the Adonis luxury resort in an attempt to get her daughter back and reignite her goal of making her a genius once again. Prior to this event, however, Eleanor had been taken from the hands of Grace Holloway by Stanley Poole and used as part of the Little Sister program to collect Adam. Now turning to a little sister, she was then pair bonded with a protector, this one being codenamed Subject Delta, and was the first successful Big Daddy model that came out of the protector program. But with a successful pair bond, this meant Subject Delta would defend Eleanor any way he could, making it almost impossible for anyone to get to Eleanor without him being in the way. As Sophia got to the Adonis luxury resort, she witnessed Subject Delta fighting against a group of splicers trying to get Eleanor, showing off his true combat abilities. But during the fight, one splicer was able to use a hypnotized plasmid on him, and at that moment, Sofia Lamb was able to reveal herself to him and convince him to take his own life by removing his helmet and shooting himself in the head. Eleanor was her daughter and not his. He had no part in her story anymore. With Subject Delta out of the way for now, Eleanor was finally reunited with Sophia, despite mourning her father who had taken his own life in front of her. With this, Lamb returned to Persephone, waiting out the civil war which was now raging within the streets of Rapture between Andrew Ryan's forces and Frank Fontaine's. Ryan was told about rumoured sightings of her, but Ryan had more important things to worry about at this time, so ignored these supposed rumoured sightings. But whilst Ryan ignored these, Stanley Poole did not, and panicked that his past actions would be found out by Lamb. Living within Dionysus Park now, Stanley orchestrated a mass flooding of the park, killing all of Lamb's artistic followers there, covering up his past actions of sending Eleanor off to the Little Sister program and sending Sophia to Persephone for Ryan's political gains. Lamb, despite all of this, stayed within Persephone, tinkering with plasmids and gene tonics on her willing test subjects, as well as making small tactical excursions to bring down more supporters from above. Persephone became the new home for all of Lamb's followers, their own paradise away from the corrupt land of Ryan, which was currently at war with itself. During her adventures here, Sophia would make many trips to Fontaine Futuristics, where she would go on to meet with Gilbert Alexander, the genius behind the pair bonding discovery. Lamb was quick to bring Alexander to her way of thinking, and convinced him to become her prime test subject in her quest to create the first true utopian. On top of this, Alexander was also able to remove the little sister's mental conditioning from Eleanor, turning her back into her daughter once again, and not the abomination she had been turned into. By 1960, both Andrew Ryan and Frank Fontaine had been removed from the equation, as they were both killed by Andrew Ryan's own child, Jack Ryan. With this happening, Sophia was able to venture all over Rapture without worrying of being caught or involved in their civil war. With her now free to roam about, she would go on to discover Fontaine's program of genetic tampering that had enabled Jack's condition. This inspired her and saw Jack's influence of "Would You Kindly" as the ultimate example of the perfect altruism, the selfless concern for the well-being of others, acting to uphold the common good without any introspection or free will. This started Lamb's new experiment, which was to create an intellect that would be completely selfless and unerringly good. As Lamb took the steps to make this happen, her plan was to give a subject massive doses of Adam, hoping that it would place all the genius of Rapture's citizens through the transfer of memories stored in Adam into them. Alexander was Lamb's first volunteer and became the first subject. But as the experiment started to take place, it immediately started to go wrong, as the Adam distorted his genetic structure, driving him mad and destroying him as a whole. It became clear that no one in Rapture could contain all the Adam of Rapture, apart from one, the the girl who was once a little sister, her own daughter, who had been physically changed from the substance. This once again furthered Lamb's goals, as now she needed to find copious amounts of Adam, and whilst she had the influence of the people of Rapture and the free space to do what she wanted, she lacked one thing: little sisters. By this point in time, all of the little sisters made back in the day had now become too old, had grown massively, and they could not help her with her Adam collection anymore. With this in mind, Lamb adapted them to become big sisters, adapting Big Daddy suits for them and getting them to grab any stolen Adam from the Rapture population. But in the year of 1967, Sofia Lamb decided to use the big sisters to get new little sisters. Here she sent multiple big sisters up to the surface to abduct little girls, bring them back to Rapture and convert them into new little sisters. This plan, whilst morally horrible, worked, as Lamb was finally able to collect Adam once again and develop her new plan in turning Eleanor into Rapture's living utopian citizen. But little did Sofia know that Eleanor was against her plans. She still remembered what she had done regarding her big daddy father, Subject Delta, and with it would go on to revive him using a Vita chamber and have him search for her once again, trying to stop Sofia Lamb's ultimate plans. By the year of 1968, Subject Delta was on the hunt to find Eleanor Lamb and ultimately Sofia Lamb at the same time. Sofia was aware that Subject Delta was back and threw everything at him to stop him in his tracks, making it clear to the family that Delta was to be stopped at all costs. But it would be no use, as Subject Delta was determined to be reunited with his daughter once again, as Eleanor helped him along the way. At this same time, however, Mark Meltzer was also venturing over the city in an attempt to search for his kidnapped daughter, Cindy. This would divide Sofia's attention, as she wanted to make sure none of the little sisters were tampered with, making Meltzer another target on top of Subject Delta. Any attempt at getting Adam for Subject Delta's own benefits would see Lamb get extremely angry, as it was taken from her reserves, and with it she would send countless splices to take out Subject Delta, and if that didn't work, she would send the big sister to fight him and take the Adam back. Throughout his journey, Subject Delta would see the events of the past, learn more about those who went against Sofia Lamb, as well as those who sided with her in an attempt to take over Rapture. It would be revealed that Lamb knew of the betrayals that happened, most significantly with Stanley, who not only got her arrested, but flooded her once home and killed her followers. This would give Delta the ultimate choice: to kill those who wronged or supported Lamb, or leave them to live on. During this, Meltzer would arrive in Dionysus Park and would finally find his daughter Cindy. Lamb saw this happen and immediately sent a big sister to capture him, taking him and his daughter to Fontaine Futuristics. Being captured by Lamb, she would go on to give him a choice: to die at the hands of the Rapture family or become a big daddy and be bonded to his daughter forever. Realizing he would do anything for Cindy, including this long journey to Rapture, Meltzer gave himself up to Lamb and became a rumbler Big Daddy. This pairing would be discovered by Subject Delta eventually, as he would have the choice on what he did with them. If he went on to kill Meltzer, he would then go on to learn the tragic tale of his journey to save his daughter from whatever took her and disappeared into the ocean. With only Subject Delta left to deal with, Lamb quickly realized that Eleanor had too big of a psychological connection to him, and the only way that Delta could be stopped would be to kill Eleanor to disrupt their bond. Whilst this wouldn't immediately kill Subject Delta, Lamb restrained him and made sure he was guarded at all costs. But Eleanor was just as determined to save her father and hit back against her mother, and with the help of her little sisters was able to free her father and plan an escape from Persephone and Rapture as a whole. As the two and Lamb eventually got to the escape pod as Persephone disappeared into the deep ocean trench, the decision what to do with Sofia Lamb would ultimately be down to Eleanor, as well as the actions of Subject Delta himself. Whether she lives or dies, it's safe to say that Lamb's rule over Rapture was now over. She had done everything she could to protect her legacy and shut down the bond between her daughter and Subject Delta, sacrificing her own people as she became desperate to stop him in his tracks. In the end, Sofia went from being a well-respected woman of the people who would do everything she could for the greater good. However, the more she tried to experiment, the more she would lose her sense of what was right and wrong, and with it would destroy her relationship with her own daughter as she desperately desperately tried to turn her into something that would enhance her own legacy. Was Sofia Lamb's fate changed by the actions of Andrew Ryan, Frank Fontaine, and all of the others around her? Or was it always going to go down this way? That will ultimately be down to your own perspective. But it's clear that during the journey of Subject Delta, that Sofia Lamb is a cold individual that will do anything to get her way. Somewhat similar to Andrew Ryan. If she does live on, who knows what she will do now without Rapture. But her plans to make Eleanor the saviour of Lamb's Rapture would ultimately be a failure, as Sofia would find herself completely isolated, with her once home falling down into the deep sea ocean trench, never to be seen again. For now though, this has been the tale of Sofia Lamb, Rapture's cold, calculated psychiatrist. And that is the story of Sofia Lamb, the main antagonist of Bioshock 2. What did you think of her as a character? Did you enjoy Bioshock 2? And what do you think she would do now if you saved her during the good ending of Bioshock 2? I hope you all enjoyed this video and would like to see more from the Bioshock universe. If you did enjoy this video, do leave a like, leave a nice comment, check out my other lore videos, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you really loved, like absolutely loved this video, why not support me on Patreon or as a YouTube member for early access to these videos, as well as them being completely ad-free. And speaking of which, I'd like to thank my supporters real quick. Big thanks to our small fish guys, our big fishers Christopher, AVP Man, Last Persona User, and Arto Krem, our shark Wow Such Gaming, our huge megalodons Sinus Jacob Garcia, and our absolutely legendary starfish Shadow SGT. And also a big shout out to our YouTube channel member, our wise one Jambu. All your support means the world to me, and it means I can make these videos for you guys, so thank you all so much. But that is all for now. Many thanks once again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.